My first assignment was to get rid of the exiled Ukrainian intellectual Lev Rebet. This man, once a key player in the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists and later the Deputy Prime Minister of the Ukrainian government, became a thorn in the side of the Soviet Union. He had to go. I watched in the background as Rebet walked through the Stakos, a grand square in central Munich, where he wrote his anti-communist articles in a small office. As he entered that office building, I followed him to almost the door of his newspaper. I remember it vividly. How he walked without a care in the world, briefcase in hand, just ambling along without any protection in sight. That was his major downfall, his brazenness. Surely he must have known that he was on the kill list of the KGB. He began to walk up a staircase and suddenly I was right in his face. I quickly pulled out my state-of-the-art single-barrel poison gun that contained a hydrogen cyanide capsule and I blasted a cloud of mist in his face. He dropped right away as if he'd been struck down by the devil himself. I walked away casually, putting the gun under the newspaper where it had been previously hidden, leaving the man strung over the staircase. There was nothing that could be done for him, and I had done my job well and would later be commended for it. Better still, because of the nature of the poison used, the authorities thought the cause of death was a massive cardiac arrest, and that's why the KGB loved their cyanide. The problem was never the fact that cyanide poisoning wasn't certain death. It was how to get a man in public, how to create a weapon that could blast the mist with accuracy, and well, we had guys in our secret laboratory, the Cell, to sort that problem out. That scene, which happened on the 10th of October 1957, starred a KGB assassin named Bhutan Stashinsky. While there were plenty of assassinations undertaken by the KGB, Stashinsky is a man whose name is perhaps best known. His assassination of Rebet has gone down in history, but it was by no means his most infamous act while taking orders from the KGB. He would kill again, and he would use new and improved weapons. But first we should ask the question, how does a man become an assassin for the KGB? That's not a job that would appear in the local newspaper. It's not even a vocation that one would tell his own family about. Stashinsky was born in a village outside the Ukrainian city of Lviv. Back then, in 1931, the city was part of Poland, but it later became part of the Soviet Union after Germany and the Soviets invaded Poland. Stashinsky certainly grew up in a tumultuous time. His three sisters became part of what's known as the anti-Soviet Ukrainian Insurgent Army, but it seems young Bogdan was not on board with them. When he was just 19 years old, he was arrested for traveling on a train and not having a ticket. We can't tell how it happened or what kind of duress Stashinsky faced, but during that arrest, he agreed that he would spy for the Soviet secret police. And with his sisters as part of the anti-Soviet insurgent army, Stashinsky was well placed to leak vital intelligence to the Soviets. At home, he pretended everything was normal, and then he'd go and report what he heard to the secret police, which was then part of something called the MGB, or Ministry of State Security. Stashinsky became such a valuable asset and so good at his job that while still in his early 20s, he was sent to work as an undercover agent in Kiev and later East Germany. It was there that he studied German until he was fluent, and after that he started using the name Josef Lehmann. Now the Soviets had a spy working in Germany that could pass off as a German and move between East and West Germany. If anyone asked him, he was born to Polish-German parents. He kept the same birthday so he'd never forget if asked, but for some reason he made himself 1 year older. He was fluent in German, but the problem was his accent wasn't exactly perfect. Because of this, Stashinsky made up a backstory that he had lived in Poland and Ukraine before. In fact, he even visited all the places he had supposedly grown up in and lived in and could recount tales of what he'd done in those places. Such was the work of a spy. Those guys had to be great actors and be able to talk about a past that didn't exist. Not exactly easy when staring down the barrel of a gun. Stashinsky eventually set up shop in East Berlin and was met by a handler for the secret police. Our soon-to-be assassin honed his spycraft amongst other Soviet and East German spies, while making contact with military and political leadership. Soon, Stashinsky's talents for killing would be discovered and put to the test. In 1954, Berlin had not yet been divided by fences and barbed wire, and so often the spies from the compound would take off and go do their business in the West. At the same time, Western intelligence, mainly the secret services of the Americans, British, and French, were doing the job of espionage in the East. There were checkpoints here and there, but those could easily be bypassed. Berlin was literally full of spies, with one former British spy who became a double agent for the Soviets, a man named George Blake, saying it was so crazy he felt every other adult male he saw was likely in some way spying for one of the sides. Like a giant game of very dangerous cat and mouse, spies circled each other on Berlin's streets, with their life only ever being one trigger pull away from being over. The Soviets originally planned for Stashinsky to move into a management position in some corporate office, but because of his not quite perfect German accent, it was decided he would draw too much attention. The Soviets lost faith in Stashinsky being able to remain undetected. After all, in a city full of spies, the guy with the funny accent was going to draw a lot of suspicion. They decided he would work as a laborer. Just like in any other place in the world, nobody pays attention to the laborer with a funny accent. One of the men that Soviet spies had their eye on for elimination was named Steppen Bandera. He was a far right-wing Ukrainian ultranationalist who held some rather hardline views. He wanted to unite Ukraine, but in the style of Ukraine for Ukrainians only. Ukraine would be made great again by kicking everybody who wasn't Ukrainian out, and of course, that included the Soviets. Yet Bandera was not an easy man to get to. Paranoid and with a suspicion that the Soviet Union might be out for his blood given his anti-Soviet views, Bandera exiled himself in West Germany and had plenty of security around him. His time would come, but first the Soviets decided to go for an easier target, a man who happened to be enemies with Bandera and the victim we introduced you to at the start of the show, Lev Rebet. Rebet wanted to unite Ukraine, but not in the same fashion as Bandera. Both these men, you'll see, became related in a kind of way, despite their differences. Rebet was an intellectual, a journalist, a book writer, and a newspaper editor. Bandera called him a stooge for the CIA. But where both men were similar is that they were both anti-communist. Now back to our assassin, Mr. Stashinsky. He was told by his bosses in the KGB that both these men were dangerous, but Bandera was hard to get close to. On the other hand, Rebet didn't walk around with bodyguards, since he probably thought that writing intelligent articles that espoused Ukrainian unity wasn't something he'd be killed for. As you know, he was wrong and it cost him his life. Before he could get through the office door, Stashinsky blasted cyanide mist in his face. The KGB hadn't at first decided to kill Rebet, and in fact the plan had been to spike his food, knock him out, take him to East Germany, and coerce him to say that he had defected. After that, he'd be forced to write propagandist articles about how bad the West was. That plan had changed, and Stashinsky was told his mission was to kill Rebet. He wasn't happy about this at all, since he wasn't keen on murdering someone, but he knew if he turned down an order, it would likely lead to his own death. On October 9, 1957, a man arrived at Tempelhof Airport in West Berlin carrying 100 marks and a suitcase containing 2 large cans of sausages. It was Stashinsky moving under a different name. He had flown in from France on a West German passport, but inside West Germany, he was told to use his East German passport that had the name Josef Lehmann. Only one of those cans actually contained sausages, the other contained a poison gun. On October 10th, Stashinsky swallowed an antidote pill. He was told to take one before the assassination and one after the job was done. And that way, he wouldn't fall ill or die if the mist got into his own system. He had 10 pills in all, just in case his plan failed. In the morning, he was observing some offices in a plush part of town, which could obviously arouse suspicion given the hectic times. If the police asked him what he was doing, he was told to tell them that he was merely a tourist and he was just looking at the marvelous architecture. As you know, that morning, he would get his man. Forensic scientists would rule his death as a heart attack, which Rebet's wife didn't believe since her husband had never had any heart problems. The killing didn't stop there. In January 1959, Stashinsky was given another task. This time his mission was to find out where Steppen Bandera lived. Again, he flew to Munich under a West German passport, but this time as a man named Hans. The KGB thought they knew where Bandera lived, but when Stashinsky went to check the address out, he discovered that Bandera wasn't living there. The KGB told him he might be living under the name Stefan Popel, so Stashinsky looked in the phone directory for such a person and he found one. He went to that address and hid for a while, and lo and behold, he saw Bandera arrive there. The KGB then had one more message for Stashinsky. Your order is to liquidate the target in the same way you did Rebet. First, he returned to Moscow to pick up the weapon. This time, it was a vastly improved double-barrel poison gun. He was told that Bandera would likely have a bodyguard with him, so now he could take them both out. They gave him his antidote pills and said, off you go, don't fail. The Soviet Union needs you. Oh, and one other thing they gave him was a set of keys for Bandera's apartment building. Don't ask us how he got those. The plan was to secretly enter the building and then get Bandera as soon as he walked in. Stashinsky did his due diligence and watched the apartment for a few days. Most times, Bandera was with his bodyguard, but then one night he saw him walking alone. He had his chance. It was now or never. But for some reason, Stashinsky couldn't go through with it. Instead, he turned his back, shot the gun at the floor, and dumped it in a stream. He also broke the key to the apartment, which was all a ruse, so he could tell his superiors that he tried to go through with the assassination, but it failed. The KGB were less than impressed when Stashinsky told them in Moscow what had happened, and they sent him right back to Munich. On October 15, 1959, he swallowed his antidote pill and went to Bandera's apartment building. He was pretty sure his handlers were watching him this time, so he knew he had to go through with it. He used a new set of keys to get into the building and laid in wait. At the moment that he knew Bandera was trying to open the door, he stood waiting with his poison gun hidden under a newspaper. It took some time because Bandera was holding a bag of vegetables and couldn't quite get the door open. Stashinsky just waited on the other side, thinking, "Come on, come in." He finally did, and out of sheer nervousness, he gave him both barrels of the gun into his face. Bandera dropped to the floor, and off Stashinsky went into the busy streets. The next day at the airport, he read a story about how Bandera, known to his neighbors as Popol, had mysteriously died. He'd just fallen to the ground inside his apartment complex. The death looked like natural causes, said the newspaper. The autopsy actually revealed that the cause of death was cyanide poisoning, but the police kept this hidden from the public for as long as they could. The cops believed that they could have a suicide on their hands, but it seemed unlikely given that Bandera was so strong-willed. You have to remember that cyanide guns were pretty high-tech killing devices, so it confounded the cops how cyanide could have gotten into Bandera's system. Back in Moscow, Stashinsky was given the Order of the Red Banner for his actions and was cheered by his colleagues. But that didn't mean he could hang his gloves up. He was told he had one last assignment, and that was to assassinate the anti-Soviet Ukrainian nationalist leader, Yaroslav Stetsko. But by this time, Stashinsky had fallen in love with an East German woman and was falling out of love with the KGB. He wanted out, but how to get out? They wouldn't even let him be there for the birth of his own son. When that son was 4 months old, he suddenly died, and the KGB told Stashinsky that he could go back to East Berlin for the funeral, but not as Josef Lehman. Stashinsky had had it with the KGB. He took that fake ID, got his wife, passed through into West Berlin, and then got a flight to the USA. He had defected, and that's what he told the US authorities. Okay, so that sounds truthful to you guys watching the show, but what was the US supposed to think? Maybe Stashinsky hadn't actually defected and was in fact still a spy, a kind of Trojan horse. The CIA flew him back to Germany and interrogated him there. They didn't want the man on US soil. The thing was, though, Stashinsky could describe in detail what had happened to Rebet and Bandera. He could recount details that only the cops knew. Not only that, the police and secret services at this point had no idea that Rebet had been assassinated. The CIA still thought that death by poison spray gun was over the top. They never heard of such a thing. In documents that would later be revealed, the CIA wrote that Stashinsky would not be valuable operationally as a double agent, that he was not a bona fide defector, and the individual he purported to be. Nonetheless, he was imprisoned in 1962 for 2 murders, but got out in '66. What happened to him and his wife after that, we don't exactly know. We found one newspaper clipping from 1984 on the CIA's website that said he was sent to South Africa, and he didn't only get a new name but also underwent extensive cosmetic surgery. Now you need to watch this video, KGB Secrets and Why It Fell Apart, or this video, CIA versus KGB, which was better during the Cold War.